Aloha and welcome to the Embodied Healing Self podcast with your host, Jen Mons. Each week, join me for soul-inspired, conscious conversations around embodied healing and awakening to your soul's purpose. Thank you for listening in. Hello, friends, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Embodied Healing Self. So I'm doing something a little bit different this week. I've been recording with some amazing speakers over the last few weeks, and I've got quite a library of awesome guests to share with you. But some of you may know that there is a hurricane that has been stirring around in the Atlantic Ocean for the past week, and since I am a resident of Florida, this is something that affects seasonal change for us. So I thought I'd take a moment just to share an element that I feel is so vital and important for our well-being, as it's showing up for me currently with this storm off the coast of Florida, which is harnessing the energy of Mother Nature for our healing. And I thought, since I'm in the middle of it right now, I'm just going to share how it shows up for us in our life, no matter where you live, and how we can choose to allow ourselves to be supported by the healing energy of the earth, which I think is just absolutely amazing. So chances are, if you're listening to this show, you're probably already some type of healer in your life. And I want to just say, as I've said before on other shows, that being a healer doesn't mean that you're a certified practitioner or practicing in any way. Some of you listening might be a healer in your family. You might be a healer for pets or nature or children as a teacher, or as an athletic coach or a fitness teacher, or maybe you're a coworker or a friend who people love to come to when they need help with something. So you know if you're this type of person, but maybe you haven't clearly embraced or received the idea that your very presence is healing to other people. Now, I know for as long as I could remember that I was always a person who people would come to and ask questions. I remember always kind of being in the energy of somebody who saw everybody equally and was just somebody who genuinely cared about the well-being of everybody. If you're listening to the show and you can relate to this, as many of us can in different ways, it might be through animals or coworkers or friendships, but chances are that you are some type of healer just by your very presence in the world that you live in. And so it's really important for us to fill up our own cups, to receive energy, because we may not even be aware of the energy that we're giving in the healing space that we create. And so I'm going to share with you today how this storm, Dorian, has shown up in my life and the different choices that people can make, and how I choose to harness the energy of Mother Nature, whether it's the hurricane or a couple of weeks ago when I was in Yellowstone National Park. Like, I just had a huge energetic vibrational shift because I really allowed myself to be open to receiving just healing from the earth. And so really just going to invite you to tap into that into your life. So many of you listening probably have heard before that there are usually 3 ways that people respond to traumatic events or chaos or catastrophic events. And usually what we hear of is there's the fight, the flight, or the freeze. So I am a person who instinctively, when things get crazy, I rise up to fight or change something. Now, there have been times in my life where I've endured great trauma, and as I went through the healing process for a period of time until I did the deep inner work, I would go through a freeze phase. And I just want to encourage those of you that are listening that if you find yourself in that phase of freezing or kind of turning the other way, I just want to encourage you to know that the deeper inner work can allow you to come into the healing part of the acceptance of where we are. I want to just kind of open the segue by mentioning that my perception comes from being a person who wasn't catastrophically affected, but definitely affected by a hurricane 3 years ago in 2016 with Matthew, where we were removed from our home for about 7 months. And what I learned in that process was that it was never about losing material things, but it was the value that I have on the quality of my life. So in other words, the things that we have to worry about in our country, we're very lucky in all the resources that we have for help. And that there are resources to help us, and they don't always necessarily come easily or as quickly as we would like them to, but that they are there. And what I noticed is that the hardest part throughout the whole process was the discomfort of really having to we really just kind of lost our quality of life, and that, we were just sort of at the mercy of the insurance companies and just whatever time demanded for us. So I say that just to share that my perception of how I'm reacting now to this particular storm comes from a place of doing a lot of healing work around grief and loss and trauma in my own way of a storm coming. Because had I not done this inner work, I would probably still be in a place of feeling the stress or the overwhelm of what could happen. I think it's really important to learn how to harness and transmute negative energy in our life. And current example with Mother Nature is just a very tangible event that you might be able to relate to, where we can choose to really transmute energy into a positive way. One of the things that I like to do is really lean in and connect with the energy around me. And I think this goes back to the fight, flight, or freeze. Whenever we have an uncomfortable situation in our life, our body responds. And so in this particular situation, I live a couple blocks from the beach, and as we go out to the beach and feel the energy of the ocean moving around and of the wind coming. I mean, it is just a massive energetic shift. It's quite amazing, actually. And one of the ways that I personally choose to work through my anxiety as the storms approach is to be with it. And I actually choose to do this by surfing in the ocean and windsurfing on the windy days. I feel like all of the energy that is stored up in me that creates anxiety is then harnessed into joy. And so I allow myself to take part in the joy of what she has to offer rather than the stress and the anxiety. And that's just a conscious choice that I make. It feels really good and really empowering to make that choice. Now, this particular storm has been moving very, very slow and given me the time to make time for fun and play in this. And so a couple days ago, as we were sitting at the table and my husband and I were kind of making our evacuation plans and discussing what we were going to do, my dear friend texted me and said, let's go windsurfing. And I kind of thought for a moment, I really shouldn't. I should do, this or that. And if you've listened to my show before, you've probably heard me say, if you ever find yourself saying the word should, immediately replace it with I will. So I just decided, okay, I'm going to go. And it was one of the most amazing days ever. So I was super happy to do that. And so the funny thing is that when events happen in the world or, natural disasters happen or kind of something big happens, a lot of people want to kind of stay on top of it, know what's going on, and kind of talk about it. And even in my community, it's kind of something that brings people together. Like all of a sudden the neighbors will be out in the front yard talking about like, once the mandatory evacuation orders come out, it's like, are you going to leave or what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? What do you think's going to happen? And my husband works on the river. He is a harbor pilot. So I look at these storms totally differently. I am not worried so much about the damage that the storm is doing, but the safety of my husband, because he is climbing up the side of massive ships that are bringing gasoline into the port so nobody runs out of gas on a rope ladder. If you don't know what a harbor pilot does, or you've never seen his Instagram account, it's quite nerve-wracking. And so I really don't even think about the damage as much as I do his safety. So my perception is quite different, I think, or maybe more similar to those of loved ones of, first responders, and how local police authorities and things like that have a duty to respond to the needs of the community first. These storms have a way of bringing communities together, and you'll notice that people will be out kind of talking and figuring out their plans, and, maybe some people are glued to the TV just in anticipation of what's happening, or interested in the devastation that is happening in other places and wondering if it's going to happen to them. And that is not what I choose to do at all. We don't really have a TV in our house. We don't watch the news. I stay informed through updates on my phone. And that's just a personal choice that we make. And so as I went to the ocean last night, and I just felt her overwhelming power and energy. It's just the most amazing feeling, really, standing outside on the beach with the wind blowing, and we're still 24 to 48 hours from really experiencing any conditions from the storm. But just the energy in the ocean and the wind is just so amazing. I mean, it is just so humbling and wonderful. And as I just kind of allowed myself to be in stillness there and just feel her power and her energy, and it started to really show me that what I was experiencing on the beach was a reflection of me. And so what I'm saying is that whatever we experience in life is a reflection of ourselves. So my perception of the experience as I'm standing on the beach was just being like receiving the energy of, the ocean and the wind and what that felt like. Somebody else's perception on the beach might be one of anxiety and fear, and, it could be totally different. And so then what I decided to do was to come to my house, and it felt like the energy wanted to clear space. So I began clearing space in my house by creating sacred space and just being really clear with the energy that I felt I had embodied from standing out on the beach. And then this energy carried through to my work. And so I then went through a very clear process of creating sacred space through what I call energy management or choice management, which many of us refer to time management, by clearing out as I step into the end of Q3 in my business and getting really clear about my intentions energetically and making sure that my choices for the actions that I will take in Q4 are in alignment with my energy. And I talked about that on some of the recent episodes, building a solid foundation for personal and spiritual growth, and how important it is to create a lifestyle and to self-care for the body, to create a vibrational match so that we can live in our soul expression. And that is just sort of another way of saying like your purpose. I have a lot of people who I work with whose misalignment with their well-being comes from perceived overwhelm and lack of self-confidence, not knowing what their true purpose is in life. And so maybe some of them are working a job that doesn't feel like it's in alignment with their core values and their truth, or maybe they're in a relationship that doesn't feel like it's in alignment. And usually people come to me with some sort of well-being or health-related issue, because what happens is when we don't live in alignment with our energy signature, what is right for our soul, for our body, for our lifestyle, what matters to us, it can make us unwell. And it can show up in a breakdown somewhere, in a relationship, in our health, in our finances. It'll show up as a breakdown in some way that is a part of our well-being, because relationships and connection are vital for our well-being. Abundance is another part of our well-being, which is directly connected to our ability to receive energy through financial means. So all of this is connected. And I use the word well-being because when I say health, many people just think about the physical body. So well-being really encompasses our emotional, spiritual, physical, mental, energetic body as a whole. So my process was first to receive the energy from Mother Nature. And I did this through going on the beach, leaning into it, coming in contact, making connection with Mother Nature. And I took it a step further by choosing to receive joy from Mother Nature. And so even if you don't live near a beach, maybe you choose to do this through running through the woods, or taking a hike up in the mountains, or getting on your stand-up paddleboard on a lake that you live near, or some other way, taking your dog for a walk in the neighborhood, but just enjoying the gifts of being outside and receiving some healing, which in order to do that, it invites us to be present to receive vitamin D from the sun, a nice cool breeze on your face, a breath of fresh air that is released from the trees around you. There are so many ways that we can receive healing from the earth. So the first step is to receive, to be present. The second step is to clear space and create sacred space for new energy to come in. So we're going to work with the energy that we've just received. So that's what harnessing is. The energy comes in, we work with it, we harness it, we transmute it into something more powerful. So I use the same metaphor on harnessing the energy of your fear as a catalyst for change. So this is the same situation. It's the same thing I did here. So rather than allowing myself to sit in the anxiety and the worry and the fear and over preparation, because there's some of that happening too. Some people really like to feel safe, and so they over prepare. But there really is a balance of what is practical, what preparation is practical. Receiving is first, creating the space is next. When we do this, we want to make sure that we've cleared out any old energy. So for me, I had already gone through that process as I had done some deep inner work around healing the trauma that I had experienced with just being removed from my home for 7 months. I mean, my family and I moved with 2 kids, I think 4 different times in 7 months. It was just exhausting, and nobody wants to think that they have time for that. I mean, we don't set up our lives to be prepared for things like that. When you're in that situation, you just have to sort of live in survival mode. So I had done the inner work to clear that space so that now this time as a new storm approaches, I am able to be very clear about what my intentions are and to be more calm and relaxed so that I can make good choices. And what it did is, because I didn't sit in my worry and anxiety, I had so much energy that I had received from Mother Nature that I was able to really harness it in creativity. And so for the past 2 days, I had all this extra energy to really get super clear on a lot of my personal and business goals, which for me right now include, we're in the middle of a remodel on our house. So just making clear decisions around that, which is, again, getting back to that creating sacred space. And then business-wise, just getting a lot more clarity on what my intentions are moving into the fourth quarter, cleaning out the filing cabinet, recycling a bunch of old stuff that are no longer relevant, and really just harnessing the energy of clarity in this whole situation. I share that to invite you to think, how do you respond when you feel out of control or when you feel overwhelmed? Do you give in? Do you walk away? Or do you take that energy, because there's a lot of energy behind that overwhelm and that fear, and do you turn it into something else? And I want to take it a step further to invite you to consider that if you live here locally, one of the things that we always try to do is to help out communities that are in need from the side effects of natural disasters. And a couple of years ago, we successfully almost filled a complete shipping container on a ship to Puerto Rico to support Hurricane Maria, and just had such wonderful feedback, and so many people came through and helped in Puerto Rico, here locally, all my neighbors and friends. And so we're doing something again. So if you live here locally, I'm going to invite you to send me a personal message if you're interested in helping out. This is really small grassroots efforts that make a huge difference. Huge difference, you guys. If you have supplies that you no longer need, or that you're willing to donate to the Grand Bahama and the Abacos right now, I have a dear friend that lives here close to me who also lives down there, and we are collecting items to take and drive down to Fort Lauderdale to be shipped over on Monday. So if you can bring them by my house, send me a message. I'll send you my address through Facebook, Jen Mons, or Jen Mons the Holistic Coach, or through my website, jenmons.com. This is an opportunity for you to harness the energy that you're feeling right now, the anxiety and the overwhelm, make something positive out of it, bring supplies to my house by 4 p.m. on Sunday, and we are going to get them to the people who need them. So it's just one small step that can make a really big difference. And I just want to invite you to consider, how are you responding in life and other areas of your life? How are you responding? How are you showing up? Are you showing up empowered? Are you showing up in anxiety, in fear, frozen? And wherever you are is okay, but what if there's another way? What if there's a way to lean into all of the energy that's being created in your body emotionally, from fear, from anxiety, from doubt, whatever it is that shows up? What if you could take that energy and sort of just harness it, like in a ball of energy, into something more powerful, something positive? Thanks for listening. I hope you stay safe here on the coast of Florida, and join me again next week. Aloha. Hello, friends, and thank you so much for joining me today and being a part of this community. I know there are many other podcasts that you could be tuning into, and I am deeply honored that you chose to listen in and be present with me today. I love and cherish and appreciate you, and I want to invite you to join our tribe and Facebook group under jenmons.com/connect. I would also love to gift you your guide to discovering and overcoming the self-limiting beliefs standing in the way of you living in optimal health, more energy, fulfillment, and self-confidence to create an embodied, healthy, whole you. You can find this at jenmons.com/tribe. I also have one small request to help spread the love. In order for this podcast to show up in the feed of social media platforms of other like-minded people, we need reviews. So please head on over to jenmons.com/podcast to leave a review. You will also find other inspiring episodes on that page. So I personally read these reviews weekly and would love to give you a shout out and share your kind words with our listeners. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook as Jen Mons or The Holistic Coach with the W Holistic and Jen Mons, JenMons.com. Thank you so much and have an amazing day. Aloha.